Talking About Marketing is a podcast for business owners and leaders, produced by my dad, Steve Davis, and his colleague at Talked About Marketing, David Olney, in which they explore marketing through the lens of their own 4 Ps: person, principles, problems, and perspicacity. Yes, you heard that correctly. Apart from their love of words, they really love helping people. So they hope this podcast will become a trusted companion on your journey in business.
David, when I see you, you have sunglasses on, and you've explained in this podcast why. It's a nice way to protect your eyes when you can't see what might be coming at you. But I have a question. What sunglasses would heroes wear?
They would have to wear le specs, le tough.
All right, well, there's the idea. Let's see if we can flesh that out as we go through this episode of Talking About Marketing.
Our 4 Ps. Number 1, person. The aim of life is self-development, to realise one's nature perfectly. That is what each of us is here for. Oscar Wilde.
For the person segment, something a little bit different now, and if it's not too personal, I want you just to reflect on yourself. Do you have a chink in your armour? Do you have something about yourself that makes you go a little bit weak, self-conscious? You don't like it. It's something you try to hide or diminish or downplay. Now, that could be happening at a personal level. It could be something about the way your business operates. And I just want to share a little reflection on a story that I heard recently in one of my favourite podcasts, which is Very Bad Wizards. Please do not ever listen to that podcast in a work or family environment. They were talking at deep about Stanley Kubrick and the 2001 movie, 2001: A Space Odyssey, which I love. I think it's a fascinating piece of cinema. But in it, if you recall, there is one of the earliest scenes of the spaceship is a hostess, I'm using gender-specific language there, a hostess walking along within the spaceship with the passengers, a bit like an airline hostess again, and she has this strange walk. She carefully and deliberately puts one foot above the other, and she's just a little bit wonky. And it's just part of what became synonymous with this movie that is very recognizable. And there's an interesting story about how that actor got that role.
This transition now, when we go into the flight and the flight attendant is walking, is...
On Velcro.
Yeah, on Velcro.
Yeah.
It never fails to it's like about the happiest moment for me in the whole movie.
Yeah, it's like Blue Danube Waltz.
Yeah.
So it's like this perfect, elegant, civilized, like kind of a symbol of...
By the way, the flight attendant, I heard a hilarious story. So that, this woman, I think she might have been a model or something. She went sort of on a lark because everybody was going. But she had just gotten a dental procedure and was heavily on painkillers. And so when it came time for her to do, he's like, okay, walk from here to here. She was actually kind of off balance. And he thought that was perfect because all the other, models were walking like they can, like straight, like models. And he loved it. And so
she was walking in zero gravity.
she was floating.
Nice.
That he was very much someone who would use happy accidents.
Yeah.
Well, I just think for this particular segment, there's a little thing. It's a bit like that saying, feel the fear and do it anyway. It's not so much that. The fact that she still went through to the audition in that state is not so much feeling the fear and doing it anyway. It's just not giving up, just still taking an opportunity because of this thing called happenstance. If we don't do something, we know the results, nothing's going to happen. But if we do try, we just don't know. And sometimes it can be what you're expecting. Sometimes it can be something, well, it can be negative, but more often than not, I have found that if we're open, we will see a new opportunity, or a door that we were hoping would open would actually open as well. David, what do you make of this particular story?
I think a really important thing is that we do respond positively to the unexpected, because often if the day is the same as it was yesterday, we just go ho-hum. Where something about this person turning up to audition was very different, and it meant the movie would be very different. And not different in a deliberate look at me kind of performative way, but just in a, this is not what you would expect, but it's also something you might just see walking down the street. Someone walking out of a dentist surgery, someone walking out of a doctor's surgery may not move in the way you expect. Someone who injured himself playing sport on the weekend may not move the way you expect. And we've got to notice that, and it's going to draw our attention. And I guess for a filmmaker, drawing attention in a way that is not cheesy or over set up is probably quite an amazing thing to find by accident.
The big thing for me, just to finish this reflection on, is the other side of this approach. So we're saying just do it anyway, but it is about quirks. Maybe this says to us we should be less concerned about disguising or averaging out our quirks, and maybe be bold enough about celebrating them, making them a feature, because in fact, as I talk about a lot, the human brain has evolved to want to be in a default state most of the time, which means basically asleep. A lot of messaging just swings by because it's what the brain expects it to be, so it's got no reason to turn on and pay attention. But a quirk, something unexpected, might actually just be that stickiness that makes someone not only pay attention in the first place, but then possibly want to hover around you as you move forward. I think that's an important thing that we take out of the 2001 A Space Odyssey. It could be our own personal branding odyssey.
Our 4 Ps. Number 2, principles. You can never be overdressed or overeducated. Oscar Wilde.
For principles, 2001 A Space Odyssey is known for the greatest jump cut in cinematic history, which is where you've got the apes at the dawn of civilization discovering weapons and finally having war, and as a bone tosses up in the air, it cuts to a spaceship in the sky. It's just a mind-blowing bit of cinema. But likewise, in our humble way, we're going to jump cut from talking about that movie to the Long War series by Christian Cameron. I think there's a tenuous link there, David. You're the one engrossed in these books. Can you tell us why we think we should reflect on them in a marketing podcast for people in small to medium enterprises?
It's quite a leap, but I think there's good reasons for the leap. So, to give you context, listener, the Long War series is all about the very protracted war between ancient Greece and ancient Persia. And the story is told from the perspective of Arimnestos of Plataea, who started as an amazing young warrior and ended up being a very important leader in reality. And Christian Cameron has sort of taken his love of history and his love of understanding how people lived, and he's a reenactor, so he loves learning to do all the things he writes about.
I've been a historical reenactor since I was 13 years old, and I feel that an enormous amount of my writing is inspired by reenacting. It provides me with the sort of experience to make the experience of ancient warfare more real. Reenacting is not just the art of putting on a pretend battle. A good reenactment involves showing the everyday life, the culture, camping, how food was cooked, what kind of food existed, dance, and every other aspect that goes into the sort of organic whole that is recreating history. And we're going to try and put that together for Marathon. And we're saying that it is that very experience of trying to create the organic whole that allows you to give depth to characters, so that all the characters aren't just kings and princes, people about whom we know a great deal from history, but the life of farmers, the life of herdsmen, the life of a wine merchant, the life of everyone who is involved in creating the classical world.
And the thing I took away from it is that a hero in ancient Greece had a lot in common with someone in small business. They decided to do the hard thing. They don't stand in the shield wall, protected by people around them, with a clear sense of what they have to do and where they have to be, and all they have to do is move with the people beside them. The hero in ancient Greece is out in front of the shield wall, surrounded by everyone, and unless they are very good at what they are doing, they will be cut down and they will end up dead. And it's not like people end up dead in small business, but there are so many ways a small business can go wrong. And it's something I've noticed working with Steve, and that is that there comes a point in small business when you transition from being a one-person operation and you need to start incorporating more people. And that transition is really difficult and can cause massive problems. And it's the same in the Long War series for the point where Arimnestos, in the parlance of the book, the book goes from being a killer of men to actually being a genuine leader. As a killer of men, he just dances through the enemy with his sword or spear lashing out, killing people as fast as possible before they kill him. And there is always this immense risk that there will be no one behind him protecting his neck and the back of his knees or his kidneys. And that one stab and he'll be dead. And that the big thing he realizes how many near misses he's had, and that as he starts wanting to become a leader and realizing, it's okay for him as a hero to take these chances of pushing ahead, but he needs people to fill the gaps he makes. He needs people to move at his back. And as he learns more about being a leader rather than a killer of men, he realizes he needs to spend his time training people so that when he pushes forward, his chosen people are right behind him, watching his back, filling the gap, meaning that when he makes space, it gets filled by people who know what to do, stick together, look after each other. They don't ever have to be the hero he is, but they have to be better than just being in the shield wall and moving in a group. They have to be able to move forward with him, support him, look after each other, help then the shield wall move forward behind them, so that the gains he makes become the gains they make, become the gains the shield wall can hold. And that really, this is what I'm seeing is the same thing in small business. That you, as the people who started small businesses, you got used to doing things on your own. You got used to doing things your own way. You got used to pushing out in front to the point where one day you realize you need people to help you to maintain what you've achieved. They aren't going to be other heroes, or they're probably not going to be other heroes. And you need to pick people very carefully who can fill the gap. You need to train them not to be you, because you don't just want more heroes creating chaos and mayhem. You want to hold and keep the ground. You want to build something solid on the risks you've taken. You want people who are courageous enough to follow, but independent enough to get on with it while you push further out. And that in the case of small business, this means not trying to get everyone to do exactly what you want, because you can't be looking forward and back at the same time. You need to look forward and trust them to build something good, because you pick good people and you train them well, and you know that your expertise is in pushing forward. Their expertise is in making something good in the new space. And that then becomes a different thing, where the relationship between you as the small business owner and the people you hire needs to be a positive relationship where you trust them and let them build something positive. It's your business, but it's them that make it work. And that can be a very difficult transition. And what I've already really seen in my 2 years of working with small and medium business is that this is the most likely point where everything will fail, because the hero can't trust the people that come behind them, and the people that come behind them don't feel trusted and therefore don't take responsibility for making it work.
And I think there's a double-sided coin here that we come across a lot. I mean, in business, it's easy, especially if it's your own, to think that your customer is just like you, when often that's not the case. That's what we spend a lot of time talking about. But the other thing is, and I'm on that journey still. I mean, I had to transition to start this company up after some history. And because I do what I do, I just assume the people around me would do the same thing. But what Christian brings to the fore through this story, and you're connecting at the dots, is, you know what? You're not all in that leadership role. It's not right to expect people to do. It's actually smarter to build the team that is doing the various bits that are needed so that everyone can find a happy space in which they love doing what they're doing that contribute to the whole. And it really is the sum of the parts becoming greater than the whole.
Our 4 Ps. Number 3, problems. I asked the question for the best reason possible. Simple curiosity. Oscar Wilde.
In the problems section this time, I just want to send a cheerio to Donna, one of our clients, working through some pretty heavy technical challenges with some clever stuff we're doing on a website. The people who have crafted a premium service that we're using have been very good in some of their responses for the tech support, but come back with a few technical questions that can be gotten out of one's web hosting. And I offered Donna the option that, yes, we can go and do that, or if she wanted to take control, she could do that bit herself. So I gave her some tips on how to talk to the Venture IP people with a specific question so that she can then go back to her developers and do it that way. In this particular case, I knew that would be really enticing for her, so she's fully engaged in the process and she can do things and doesn't have to pay for other time. And she's done that. And this is one of the reasons why whenever we work with a client, we like you to have your own web hosting account. We can help set it up, but in your name that you fully own so that you can, swing the ropes when you need to. And the other lingering question she said, is there anything else I can do whilst we're waiting for this to be done? And here's my answer to Donna and absolutely everybody, including ourselves. Write blogs. There is never a moment when we can't be thinking about a question that our potential audience would love to have us answer, or lists we can compile. There's never an excuse not to go ahead with something like that.
Our 4 Ps. Number 4, perspicacity. The one duty we owe to history is to rewrite it. Oscar Wilde.
I'm intrigued about our perspicacity segment this time, David, because you reminded me of an ad that I hadn't seen for ages for Le Specs, Le Taf, from back in, when was this? Must have been the 80s when they were doing the rounds in particular. In fact, 1982. Did you ever have a pair of Le Specs?
I didn't, but I always remember it as sort of, I imagine they tried to get the closest person to Jean-Claude Van Damme they could to do the advert. Whereas you end up with Le Specs, Le Taf, it was more like Le Specs, Le Taf. It was sort of about being, I am made of granite, and these sunglasses can survive being put between 2 bits of granite.
Exactly. Or just under a bottom. One of the ads...
That could be made of granite too.
It could be. Nice tight buns. And one of the ads they had people sitting down. Let's just listen to it and relive the spirit of La Specs La Turf.
Prestige present the Spec sit-down demonstration. Le Specs. Le tough. So tough, we guarantee them for 5 years. Ask for a sit-down demonstration.
I wonder if any French people had any feedback on that ad.
I imagine it would have been unpleasant if they did.
However, it got the message across, didn't it? So part of this segment is to look back at campaigns that once were and ask ourselves, would they work today? And when we were talking about this a few weeks ago, I think we came to the position that this probably would still work. Unlike many of the other ads we've talked about, there are some core truths in which their messaging aligns with the product and the promise in a way that's pretty timeless, David.
I think so. The fact that they didn't say, these are the best, you will never have better sunglasses. It was just, le specs, le tough. Like, these are tough enough for the normal things that are going to happen, like sitting on them. And that was kind of a nice level of honesty and done in a cheeky way of having the advert of lots of people sit in the same pair of sunglasses. And all right, we might not be able to overtly get away with, taking the fun out of the French in an advert, but maybe we could.
And I remember buying some myself. I had similar specs, and I don't remember them coming to grief in any way, shape or form, but they did. This is where I think it was a bit masterful. One of the things that stopped me after I lost a couple of expensive pairs of sunglasses in my younger years, and even again in my older years, is I said, I'm never going to spend a lot of money on sunglasses again because I lose them more than snap them. And this just gave a little bit of a salve to that irritation. If I was someone who was breaking them all the time, then it makes it a no-brainer. It'd kind of be better if they had a natural homing pigeon attached to them so that you'd never lose them. That would really get me over the wire.
The interesting thing with them was they were robust. But, what were the lenses like? Did they provide good levels of eye protection? Did we know in the early 80s? It would seem to me, from what I remember, that they were a very good price point. They were good enough, they were stylish enough that people got a reasonable amount of bang for their buck, which seems to be a sort of gap in the sunglasses market today.
Yes, it's quite polarized, so to speak, between the trashy end and paying a lot of money for them. So, interesting point. Maybe there is I'm not even sure if Le Specs are still around today.
How many million pairs are in the bottom of drawers, the boot of cars, underneath the couch? There must be, if they were that tough, there must be millions of pairs somewhere.
Yeah, well, they are still available. I just did a quick check. Le Specs, Paramount, Women's, etc., and they all sit somewhere between, from what I'm seeing, the $39 to $79 price point. So
they're still basically the same price point of above the cheap, but cheaper than anything expensive. It's just they don't have any advertising anymore. Okay.
Well, there you go. So yes, if you can find that core truth in some of your messaging and it just marries through and it marries with our experience, then there is something a little bit eternal about that. But for now, David, au revoir.
Mon ami.
Thank you for listening to Talking About Marketing. If you enjoyed it, please leave a rating or a review in your favourite podcast app. And if you found it helpful, please share it with others. Steve and David always welcome your comments and questions, so send them to podcast@talkedaboutmarketing.com. And finally, the last word to Oscar Wilde. There's only one thing worse than being talked about, and that's not being talked about.